Okay, I'm tonight's host for the digital competition, and our guest judge is Jen Cano. Um, I've got a short blurb here. I'll introduce her, and then she's going to have a short presentation. Um, Jen has been taking pictures since she was 7 years old and has been exhibiting her work since 2012. She has had pieces in numerous juried shows from Plymouth to Orleans on Cape Cod. She's a juried artist at the Cape Cod Art Center. Jen has taught photography and image editing in the Falmouth Community School, and she was the competition chair at the Upper Cape Camera Club for 8 years, and there she served one term as club president. Jen shows and sells her work at art fairs on the Cape and has been a Camera Club competition judge since 2018. This is the first time she's judged a competition for us, and we look forward to hearing what she has to say for us. Jen?
Tell her about the mute
Jen, you're
button.
muted.
Okay.
There you go.
There we
Yeah.
go.
So I was very excited about the fact that one of your categories that I won for this judging outing was abstract, because my primary passion in photography at the moment is abstract. During COVID, when all of a sudden I had free time, something I hadn't had in couldn't even remember from the last time I had free time. What was I going to do with this free time that I had? And I had always been wanting to do a photography book. And so I decided I was going to do that. And so I created a little book. It's not, it's not huge, using the book module in Lightroom. So, nothing particularly fancy, but there it is. And it's titled Visual Poetry, the Images of the Essence of Things. And I very self-indulgently wrote an introduction to this book that let me get out all of my feelings and thoughts about abstract art in general. And what I've decided to do here is just to read it to you, because it's going to be probably a lot quicker than if I tried to tell you all the information that's in here. So let me see if I can actually see this well enough to read it. Okay, so it's titled Why Visual Poetry? Why did I name this book Visual Poetry? I think about poetry as a form of literature that manages to convey a lot with just a few carefully chosen words. I think about abstract art in much the same way, and I like how Georgia O'Keeffe described it when she said, "Nothing is less real than realism. Details are confusing. It's only by selection, by elimination, by emphasis that we get at the real meaning of things." So, therefore, visual poetry. I love good abstract art, not just abstract photography, but paintings, pastels, drawings, any flat media. And by good, I mean a piece that grabs and holds my attention, touches me on a deeper level, and makes me feel something. Not all abstracts do that for me. In fact, it's a pretty small percentage. But every so often I stumble across one that I find absolutely mesmerizing, a good one. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'm lucky enough to be mesmerized by my own work. Most of the images in this book fall into that category. Now I know that abstracts, especially non-representational abstracts, are not everyone's cup of tea. They make many people uncomfortable immediately, and they react by dismissing abstract pieces without giving them any thought. The discomfort comes from our natural instinct for survival. As hunter-gatherers, we have an instinctive drive to identify everything we see so we can determine if our safety is at risk. That's why the unidentifiable makes us uncomfortable. So when you look at an abstract piece and have that wah reaction, take a moment to get over it. Let go of the drive to identify and just enjoy it for what it is. Freed from the need to identify, how does the piece make you feel? What does it evoke? I love watching people looking at my abstract photographs. They frequently see and or feel things in them that I didn't see and make connections that never occurred to me. From watching this happen, I realized that abstract art is not just about what the artist intended, it's about what the viewer brings of him or herself into the work, and in the process becomes a co-creator of the piece. So I invite you to wander through this collection of my favorite abstract photographs. Go ahead and try and figure out what they are, because I know you will, but then take a deep, conscious breath, let go of your analytical thoughts, and just look. How do the images make you feel? What do they evoke for you? Contemplating abstract art is a way to get to know yourself on a deeper level. Enjoy the journey. So that's my little self-indulgent rant on abstract art. But now you can see the process that I feel when I look at a piece and when I'm judging one. Now, once I got past the excitement of, yay, I'm going to get to look at all kinds of abstract photographs, and actually started looking at them, I realized it was much harder than judging other types of photography, whether it's nature or open or some kind of a themed category. It was much more difficult than I anticipated. So you may feel like I've struggled with some of this, but we're doing it. Okay. Now, I also asked, and in the email went out, that you have two, mine are disappearing, two things. Did everybody have two strips of something? Okay. The reason I wanted you to have these is I have a tendency, I've noticed over the years, to recommend a lot of cropping. And it's very difficult to visualize cropping. As photographers, we're all very visually oriented. We have to see it. I know with my own work, when I'm editing my own work, I need to see a crop. And so I'll play with all kinds of different crops. When I see a good one, I know it, but I don't necessarily know what that's going to be before I try it. And so when I'm going through and I'm going to be suggesting a crop, now you have little croppy tools that you can use to hold up to your screen. And I'll try to describe, where the crops should be so that you know where to hold them up to on your screen, so you can actually see what the image would look like cropped. Okay, so this is an experiment. I've actually never asked asked a group of people to do this before, but I'd love some feedback at the end what you thought about this, so I know whether I will bother to ask people to do it in the future. Okie dokie. So I think I'm ready.
Okay. Let me bring up the slideshow and we'll dive right in. Bum, bum, bum. Give me a second here. I'm rearranging windows on my screen. Okay, is that coming up to everyone? Oh, nope, I get one more button.
You're good now.
Okay. Okay, we're going to do pretty much the usual. We'll go through Open B, Open A, we'll do abstract B and abstract A. We can take a 5-minute break if we're doing well on time, stretch the legs, and then do nature B and A. So, as usual, the we haven't put numeric scores on images, and we'll just dive in, and it'll be somewhat random until we get to the pictures that are awarded prizes. And Jen, when just give me a nudge or a pause or a next when you want me to go advance to the next slide.
Okay. Okie dokie. So, I have, as in terms of the black and white aspects of this, I think that's been handled very well. There's definitely true blacks, true whites, and good contrast in the midtones. So I think it technically for black and white, it's been handled quite well. I think that in terms of composition, that it would benefit from having some of that sky cropped off on the top. And there, if you hold up your little croppy tools, if you take off about half from the top down to the person's head in the middle there, I think that would help a lot. It would get that strong line of the edge of the land there out of the middle of the frame, and I think that would improve it somewhat compositionally. I'm not 100% sure why you chose to choose this to shoot the backs of all the people. I kind of feel left out, just emotionally. I think I might have preferred to have seen this with the people facing. Maybe I'm totally missing the point of the way you shot it here, and if so, I'm sorry, but that's just sort of the way I feel about it. Okay, go. All right, so lots of nice colors here. There's an amazing sort of sameness of the styles of roof and the colors of the roof in particular. And it's not what I would think of as a typical color for roofs, this sort of orange. I'm thinking that because to me, it's kind of a documentary shot. You were there, you saw these roofs, and so you took the picture. And to my way of thinking, to make it a stronger image, I think I would eliminate the trees at the top and the bottom and just get right in on a section of all of those roofs, because it's going to take on sort of a mosaic-y kind of appearance if you do that. So if you hold your cropping tools up so that you eliminate all the trees on the top and on the bottom, and then maybe take some off the left-hand side so that you've really got that cluster of sort of the same color roofs right in the middle, it would kind of take on the appearance of like a mosaic or something like that. And I think it would just make it a more interesting composition. So this one has quite a bit of impact. You bring it up on the screen and you just kind of go, wow. I think the colors here are fairly clearly kind of oversaturated. I think that's working in this particular case. The subject itself, the tree, is strong enough so that it can kind of compete with the strength of those colors. I'm not 100% sure about the centered composition here. Generally, having a really centered composition when the rest of the image is not symmetrical doesn't particularly work particularly well. So I think that maybe cropping some off the right, maybe half of from the edge of the right to the first branch there, would get it a little more out of the center. I don't think you would lose enough of those clouds. Yeah, that it would be a problem. And I think that would improve the composition some. Okay, so there must be a story here. And unfortunately, I couldn't really decide what that was. We've got this what looks like ice or snow in the front with the strong things coming out of it. Oh, you know what? I think I suddenly realized what it is. It looks like a car, and that's the windshield wipers sticking out from it. Okay, now I get the story. Sorry, I did not get that before. I thought it was maybe some kind of planter or something, and there were these things coming out. So yeah, okay, so I do get the story now, and I'm not 100% sure. Maybe if there'd been a little bit more depth of field so that the buildings were a little bit more prominent in this, it might have helped me to see the car sooner. The other thing that would have helped me realize it was a car would be if there had been that snow is not quite 100% burned out, but it's bright enough that I really can't see much texture or form in the car. And so that's what I think made it difficult for me to see what the car was. So maybe toning it down a little bit would help to bring out some of that and would make it a little clearer what that was. Okay, so definitely a story here as well. I think that the colors are great here, and the handling of uh, the tonality of it is excellent. The mask on the table there is clearly our center of interest, and I'm not sure what the gentleman is doing there with his hands together and looking down, but I think I would have found this image more interesting if he'd actually been looking at the face. And so they would be looking at each other, the mask and the person. And I think that would have made the story of this image a little bit more compelling. Okay, so cute guy, definitely. And um a nice capture that you got him just emerging from this. The my eyes keep getting drawn to his tail and what's above his tail because of the brightness of that like gold color that's right above his tail, I think is why. But then when I looked at it, I started to try and understand what was going on with this tail. And I still don't really get it. And so I found that aspect of this image really distracting because I was so trying to figure out what was going on in that area. I'm thinking that maybe darkening that whole upper background down would focus the attention in more on the pumpkin and the squirrel, and not so that the viewer wouldn't be so distraught, or at least me as the viewer, be so distracted by what's going on just above the tail of the animal. Okay, so great action shot, catching this guy mid-air, nice and sharp. And I love the shadow that you got the shadow of him in the mid-air as well. The distortion of the background bothers me a little bit. I would kind of like to have seen that corrected, and I'm not 100% sure you could correct that without distorting the subject. You have to try it and see. But notwithstanding, it's still a terrific action shot. It's nice colors. The only, if we could see his face, it would be better than seeing the top of his head. But, with something like this, you get what you get. And yeah.
Okay, that was third place. We're going to go into second place now.
Okay, so this has a very sort of high key kind of feel to it. The snow on the roof is kind of burned out, but then you've got that really white sky, which is making all the delicate tendrils of the tree really stand out. And I really like that. And then the deep red of the buildings and the depth of the snow and all of that. Just I think for me it gave me a real sense of the coldness of winter and the starkness of winter. So I like the way that this was handled. Um, I do think it might have benefited from just a little bit of cropping on the left. But other than that, I think it's been very well handled.
In first place.
Yeah, I really liked all of the texture and the concentric circles and the radiating out from the center of the log there. It just I sort of spent a long time with it. I gave me a really nice feeling. Um, there's only thing that I would say about it is in the upper, just in from the upper right corner, there's something stuck in it that's just sort of very smooth and flat. If that was something that you could have pulled out of there, so the whole thing would have just been the wood. I think that little thing up there is a bit of a distraction. But other than that, I love it the way it is.
Okay, that was open B. Move on to open A.
Okay, so clearly some kind of a gathering going on here. There's some people with signs and whatnot, and they're all riveted looking in the same direction. I can't tell whether it was a political rally or whether it was a concert or what it was. My only clue is I can almost sort of read the sign in the guy's hand on the right there, and I think I see the word Democrat, so that's gonna take a guess that this might be a political gathering. Um, in terms of the aspects of the photograph itself as a photograph, I really like the way it's kind of dark in the shaded area on the front, and then we have this peek through to the brighter area and the buildings in the background and the sky and everything. It's almost like a frame within the frame situation. Um, I I actually think, yeah, I actually think that cropping it to get rid of most of the tree on the right. So if you hold your cropping tools up and you put it just so that it eliminates that big empty white square, they've got the hand holding up the square with nothing written on it, which is quite a bit of a distraction because it's just this plain white thing. Just crop it so that you just barely get that out, and then you're gonna be focused in more on that peeking through the trees part of this image, and I think that would make it stronger. All right, so the only the painting is nice and sharp. and has beautiful color. And I know it's because it's probably in a museum and the lighting is always perfect for that. You probably had kind of a slow exposure here because there's a lot of motion blur um, in the people that are standing and looking at it. And I think that especially the woman on the left, who's really, really blurry, is definitely a distraction in this. I kind of get that it's, we're showing people looking at it, but I think that the guy on the right there, where we're seeing mostly his back and the back of his head, I really don't think we need him. So maybe crop out that white, up to that white, just to get rid of the white guy in the white hat on the left, and crop in the other side, maybe that blurry woman sort of right smack down the middle of her head. We'd still have a good feel for the that the crowd is looking at the painting, and the person with the phone there is taking the picture. It's typical sort of thing that goes on in museums. And I think cropping down from the top, about halfway from the top of the frame to the photograph, I think cropping it in that way would give it a much stronger composition, eliminate a lot of the extraneous stuff that's not really contributing to it.
Okay, Jen, I'm going to nudge you to be spend a little bit less time on each picture,
Okay.
so we can
I'll,
keep.
try- I'll do my best. Speed is not one of my strong suits. Um, okay, so this one shows I like that it shows the environment that this guy's in. It's a nicely handled black and white. We've got really nice dark blacks and a good range of grays in the middle. What I would have suggested with this is taking it from a little bit different angle so that that hood there isn't just cutting right into him. I think it would have been better if he hadn't been cut off like that. So it took me a while and some research to figure out what this was all about. And I didn't know what pinoid was. And so I had to look it up. And apparently it's a there's a musician who named a couple of his pieces on one of his albums with, and that word's in the title. And apparently it means paranoid. It's short for paranoid. So suddenly the heart faces with the crosses made a little bit more sense. And the couple having their back to us gives us that sort of feeling of, the theme of paranoia. So even though it took me a little while to understand it, it's a nicely handled black and white. I think the really dark background there is making the people stand out well. And it's an interesting story if you understand what the whole pinoid thing is all about. All right, so the principle of symmetry has been used here. So we've got the whole black and white thing with the spot color with the flag, which is very striking, and certainly that ceiling is also quite dramatic. When you're going for symmetry, you have to be very careful that you get it exactly symmetrical. Otherwise, it gives the viewer a feeling of discomfort that they probably can't tell you what it is. But if you look at the ceiling, at the curve of that first curve arch there, you can see by looking at that it's a little off kilter, and it's not completely symmetrical. So while I think that this subject was a really good candidate for symmetrical composition, I think it's a little bit off, and you need to go in and tweak it a little bit to get it to be completely symmetrical. Okay, so we've got a good example of perspective and a sense of depth here because of the sharpness. And I love the fact that it's sharp from front to back. So the backs of the heads and the people there, all nice and sharp and clear. And yet the detailing of the game that's going on and the far side of the stadium, also nice and clear. So this has an amazing sense of depth, as well as great colors and whatnot. So I think this is a very successful image. All right, so we've got an abstract in the non-abstract category, which is totally fine. I do that too, but it is always a little bit risky. I like as an abstract, I like this a lot. I kind of see a scene. It sort of looks like maybe a fire is going on and a cloud is of smoke is forming over the top or something. But great colors. It's got a lot of impact when it first pops up on the screen. I think it's been quite well handled. All right, so these figures are beautifully lighted. So we've got that nice soft dark background, which looks like it's got even a little bit of blur to it. But that's really all working to set off the two figures. And of course, there's the costuming is just incredible and all. I am not sure why you decided to leave extra space on the right. I don't really think that's helping this at all. I would crop it off just as close on that side as you have it on the other side, and then it's just a portrait of these two very interesting individuals with a nice soft background, and I think that would improve the composition a lot. Okay, so again, it looks like there was a choice made here to shoot this as a symmetrical image. It does show that full, really nice curve, and so I understand the impulse to do that. Um, there's great colors here. There's obviously some motion blur going on in the cars, so we get a feeling of the action. It would have been really nice to avoid it until there were some cars right in front of the building, because I think that would have been really nice. Um, but I also feel like because it's not a symmetrical subject, that using a symmetrical approach to the composition wasn't a particularly good choice. And I actually think it would be quite a bit stronger if the whole right side of it was cropped off almost up to the building. And then we'd have the narrow part of the road leading right in, and then we wouldn't be led out on the other side. And to my way of thinking, it would be stronger composition. I know that you wind up losing some nice detailing on the right there, but you have to think about the composition as a whole, and not keep things in that aren't contributing to the whole. Okay, so this one's quite startling. It's a very black and white, obviously. I can't tell from looking at it here where the boundaries of the image are, but I could when I was doing the online judging. So it is a vertical format for a vertical subject, and I think that was an excellent choice. And I really like that you saw this and were able to capture all those lovely curves that Mother Nature decided to put there. Um, nicely handled, black and white, I think. Okay, so this has a very abstract quality to it. I love all the colors and the flow and the softness of the foggy ness of it. And even in the subject in the middle, there probably is some fog over that too, which is kind of reducing it to a bunch of shapes. But it's very strong. And I'm okay in this particular instance, I'm okay with it being a bullseye composition with the main subject in the right smack in the middle, because there's enough variation in the foreground and the background and the colors and all to keep it the interest.
And we're moving into the honorable mentions.
Yeah, this is a cool image. Frequently with these shots down a long, narrow space, there isn't anything, there's no like payoff at the end, but this one has an amazing payoff at the end. We've got that red door and we've got what looks like a cat right next to it. So bravo for catching it with the cat in there, and also seeing that there's that nice red door at the bottom of it. I do think that centering this was not probably the best choice, because the red door is right smack in the middle, and it's almost symmetrical, but not quite if you look at the bottom. There's lots of nice texture and whatnot in the walls, but I believe that if you crop off the left side enough to get rid of that lovely big area of texture there, which is so strong that it's kind of distracting us from going down the alley and looking at it, that would get it. Yeah, hold your cropping tool off and just crop that whole thing right off there and see if you don't think that improves the composition. I definitely feel that it does. Okay, this is quite lovely. All that detail in the buildings and all the lovely textures and swirlies in the formations of the ice. This is I really like this photograph. I do feel that the in the lower left corner there, where there's that piece of a little bit of open water, very dark, that's coming up in there, I feel like that's a distraction. So if you hold your cropping tools up and just crop it to just enough to eliminate that, I think you still have all of the shoreline, the buildings, and you still see lots of ice, and I don't think that yeah, I really think that taking that off at the bottom would strengthen the composition, get rid of that distraction there.
And third place.
Oh, love this. The young man there that's peeking in, and he's looking right at those very striking sort of photographs there. Get a real feeling for, that there's a story here for sure. It's nice and sharp where it needs to be, and catching that expression on his face is just really making this. I do feel that you don't need the clutter on the left. If you cropped it right off at that strong vertical right there and got rid of all of that, I think the composition would be much stronger. If you hold your cropping tool up there, see if you don't think so. But I just feel like there's too much there, and there's too much. It's too bright. There's too much contrast. It's a real visual distraction from the main part of the image. All right, so this is a wonderful sort of environmental portrait. We've got showing his hands holding on to a piece of his equipment there, and the light is just wonderful. It's coming in from the side, so we get lots of texture. And it just has so happened that you can see both eyes. That the light is just right so that you just see a little peek of the eye on the dark side of his face. It's a really nice portrait. Um, if I were to have any wishes for this one at all, it's that I wish that it was just a little bit more focused on what would be his right hand. So the hand on the left, as we're looking at it, is a little bit more out of focus than I would like, but it's a relatively uh small thing in an otherwise very, very nice image. And I like the sepia. I think the sepia black and white treatment was perfect for this.
And first place in open A.
Yeah, so all that beautiful blues there. We get a real feeling of winter here, and that lighthouse so beautifully lit, and the colors very vibrant. It just makes it really stand out. So lots of impact with this image. Just kind of go wow when you first see it. The only thing I would suggest with this is cropping a little bit off the bottom. I don't think you need all of that snow, just eliminating the bottom so it just looks like it's all bushes and stuff, rather than there being this area at the bottom where there's no vegetation. I think that would be a little bit better.
Okay, now we're getting to the abstracts, abstract B. We're a little behind schedule, so I'll probably skip any of the intermission, uh,
Yeah,
that 5 minute break. And Jen, maybe you could do it a tiny bit faster.
I'll try.
Thank you.
Okay, so nice strong black and white. I think that aspect of it is well handled. That you've got a really strong triangle at the bottom, and you've chosen to shoot this as a symmetrical, even though it's not a symmetrical subject. And I found that a little problematic. I think cropping off like the top almost all the way down to the peak of the strong triangle at the bottom would actually make this into a stronger composition, and then straightening it a little bit to get rid of those little peaks of light in the lower left hand corner there, so that it just slightly rotated clockwise just a little bit would help keep it more symmetrical. And once you've gotten rid of the top, the symmetrical composition will work much better. All right, so this is a case where you can recognize what it is. And sometimes that is a little bit problematic with something that's otherwise pretty abstract. So I agree that it's very abstract. It's got nice value contrast. It's the colors are very harmonious, but the line of lettering that's going right down the middle, people want to be able to, when they see letters, they try to read. And so people are going to focus on trying to make out what that says, as opposed to looking at the composition itself. And so feel like that's just a distraction here. And I'm not sure what the solution to that would be, but just kind of bear that in mind when you're taking photographs with any kind of readable matter in it. Okay, so the instinct to identify kicks in here for me when I look at this, and I kind of see like a bed of flowers. I could be wrong about that, but that's sort of what I see, and so that kind of make that affects how I look at it. In terms of the the technical aspects of it, I feel like feel like the blurriness was either not enough or too much. It's just enough that it makes me want to identify what it is. I think the more interesting part of this image is the right side. The left side has big blobs of very bright color, and so it's drawing our eye over there, but that isn't really the most interesting part. So if you hold your crop tool up and you crop this into a vertical, um, to get rid of all the really bright spots, the bright spot that's sort of in the middle of the bottom, just hold the cropping tool up so that it goes right there. And now you've got a vertical composition, and you've got a lot of vertical movement in this. You've got what looks like blades of grass or maybe stems going up. I think that would improve the composition quite a bit. And the other thing that would help is that if you pull it into Lightroom and do a dehaze on it, it's going to give those colors a little bit more definition, and it'll have better contrast, especially in the midtones. And I think that would, I think there's a lot of potential here if you try that, but just try it and see what you think. Okay, this one has great contrast and a lot of diagonal movement, and excellent colors. It's kind of lacking a center of interest. Our eyes are going to be drawn to the very brightest things, and those things are kind of the same as everything else in the image. So even with an abstract, you really need to direct the eye in some way, either by having some sort of center of interest or by messing with the light in it, by dodging and burning so that you create a path for the eye to travel through. Okay, so because it says Mason right across the middle, we know what it is. So we can not worry about the identification because it's already identified for us. But once we know what it is, I think it makes it a little bit less interesting. I also feel that what's drawing the eye here is the big white thing in the lower left, and with the three dark things on the top. And to my way of thinking, that's not the most interesting part of the image. The more interesting part for me is the pinks and the swirling of what's in there. And so what I would try, and you can see what you think, is cropping it off so that you get rid of, so you keep the S in, but just barely, and then crop the bottom to get rid of the little floaty thing, brown floaty thing in the corner. And now it's very monochrome. It's all pinks and just in swirly. And it says sun, and instead of Mason. Now you have to think about it. All right, so this one's clear enough that we can kind of figure out the whole. We can see how it flows and it comes around. The big circle there on the right is like the perfect frame within the frame that we need a payoff if we're gonna look through there. And there really isn't. So we've got this area that's circled, it's drawing our attention to look right through there. And there really is, it's like there's no red door. Remember with the red door on the other one? It kind of needs something to do that. I think that in terms of it being an abstract, the most interesting part of this is the big, strong, sort of stem-looking thing coming up the middle. It's got lovely curves and swirling and really nice, well-defined colors. And so I think cropping it into a vertical and just having it be that part of the image would make it stronger as an abstract. That would also get rid of those completely burned out areas that you see on the right there, just inside the loop, and on the left, there's quite a big sort of bullet-shaped thing there, totally burned out. And so rather than trying to correct those, just crop right in nice and close. You might have to correct a little bit of that, but I think that would make it a much stronger abstract. Okay, so this one has nice color harmony. It's got a kind of a complementary colors thing going on there with the green and the pink. And it gives us some like it's got quite a large center of interest in the pink there. We really can't tell what it is. We could sort of say, well, it kind of looks like a flower, but then it doesn't really matter. I think the curves and the delicateness of it makes it very interesting. And yeah, I think this one's um, quite well handled. All right, so and this is going to be a little bit prejudiced towards what how I feel about this one, but I find that the oversaturatedness of this, especially the pink that's almost fluorescent, it's for me personally, it's off-putting. I I don't want to look at it. Um, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way to crop it to correct for that. Um, I actually think the upper half where there's a little better balance between the pink and the blue, which is, you know, a nice complementary sort of close complement thing going on, would help it a lot, but I would still back off on the saturation so that it's not quite as in your face. And that's me. That's one person's opinion. Some people may really like this effect, but unfortunately you're stuck with me tonight, and it's not working for me. All right, so very monochrome and a strong shape. As humans, we like strong geometric shapes. We're drawn to them, and so I think that was I like that choice to it. The number 4 in the top that you don't quite see right away is a bit of a mystery, but I wouldn't take it out or anything. I think it's fine for it to be there. What I would do with this is crop about half of the right side off between the base of the triangle and the right side. And that would get the subject a little bit more out of the middle, and I think it would just improve the composition. Actually, I spent quite a bit of time looking at this. I like the strong shapes here. Um, the I wish that the big bright sort of orangey pink thing on the part of this on the left is too bright, with the rest of the composition has a very dark aspect to it. That big bright area isn't interesting enough to be the center of interest of this, and yet it's forcing itself to be because of its brightness. The center of that, which almost looks like a door in a cloud, like it's some kind of fairy tale or something, is really more interesting, but it's being completely overshadowed by this really bright area here. Also in the corner, the left-hand lower corner, there's a bunch of lines and gradations of like brown in there, and I really would like to see that better. So lightening up that area, I think, would help to balance this out, and toning down that really super bright area would help it a lot too, because our eyes are just shutting down and we're not seeing the dark areas of this image. Okay, so this is almost shot as a symmetrical. It's not the corner of the structure here is not quite smack in the middle, but it's close. So I think there was an attempt made to shoot this um, as a centered image. I didn't really think that it should be, frankly. Um, I like the colors, I like the geometric, I like the feeling of form that this has, but I do think it would be stronger if most of the left side was cropped. So if you count out from the center of the building, 1, 2, 3 lines, and crop it right at that line. You can hold your tool up and look. It gets it right out of the center. The real interest is in the side with the colors and the variation of light in the squares, whereas the other side is almost has a flat appearance because it's all the same. And so taking that off and doing it that way. And then the other thing I would do with this, once it's been cropped, is flip it so that it goes the other way. So you're entering in through the side with all the color, and that's darker, and you're winding up at the bright side. But again, try it, see what you think. I was really tempted to take a screenshot and try it myself, but then I would have spent my entire week and gotten nothing else done if I did that to some of the images.
Okay, that was the honorable mention. We
Mhm.
move on to third place.
Yeah, so I really like the feeling of motion of this. It's and the lines and the curves and all of that and the colors. I think that it could stand from a little bit of dehazing just to make the colors a little bit bolder. And the other thing I would try with this, and I'm not sure how, would be to flip it 180 degrees so that the bright area is at the top and the darker area is at the bottom. I think that would give it a different feel. And again, I didn't try it and I didn't stand on my head to see what it would look like, but I do like it the way it is, but try flipping it and see what you think.
Second place.
Yeah, this is really nice. I like the diagonals going across, the sort of sameness of the colors. Um, and it's all hanging together really well. The only thing that I would fix with this is the upper right-hand corner has this little blue area, and that's kind of not in keeping with the rest of the image. But that would be a really easy thing to do a little cloning and just extend what's already there up into that space. And I think that little distraction of that blue area would strengthen this image up slightly, but it's already very strong as it is.
And first place.
Yeah, this is really beautiful. I think that it's just I've spent so much time looking at it. I kept seeing different things in it the longer I looked at it. I can sort of recognize that there's probably a building that there's some architectural stuff going on in the back, but that isn't really what made it for me. I like that it's a little bit tilted, and we just kind of have a feeling of like flight, and it almost looks like bird wings in through that area where there's the white and the blue stripes. And it had a lot of impact for me when I first brought it up on the screen, and it was like I picked it out as my first place image, like almost immediately.
That was B. Now we'll go on to abstract A.
Okay. All right. So it's a very monochromatic kind of color scheme here, all different colors of reds, nice dynamic range, and the little bits of white kind of bring it out. I do think it's kind of lacking as a strong enough center of interest. Um, Again, I think you could have worked with it a little bit with a little dodging and burning to give our eyes a path to kind of travel through, and that would have made it hold the interest a little bit longer. Okie dokie. So great textures here and nice earth tones, kind of a feel to it. Um, the strong, what looks like a tree trunk right down the middle of it, or slightly off the center of it, is kind of dividing this into two separate things. And I feel like it would be stronger if you picked one side or the other and just cropped right down the middle of that. So if you hold your cropping tool up, and I think I like it better cropped off with the right cropped off. And so just crop off the right, hold your tool up so that it's going right down the middle. Then I think you've got a much more a composition that directs the eye better. Okay, so we can clearly tell what this is. It does have an abstract quality to it. So, and it has a strong center of interest in that the circles are coming right into that the area of the globe there. Or whatever that round thing is supposed to be. I guess there's little figures in there. What I think it's a little bit having that right smack in the center where this is, and it has kind of a symmetrical composition to it because the concentric circles there in the middle are all kind of centered. And I don't think that's the strongest composition for this. So one thing I would suggest is cropping one side or the other to get it out of the center and bringing it up a little bit on the bottom. You would still get those other elements coming in. That's one suggestion. My other suggestion is leave it pretty much the way it is, but you've got a lot of really distracting elements around the edge because the center of interest here is not particularly bright. So on the left-hand edge, you've got a really bright row of something. In the lower right corner, you've got a super bright area there. The structure on the right, see how it's all toned down? Do the same with the structure in the upper left, which looks like it's the same thing, but there's light on it. And having bright elements around the edge like that draw our eye away from the center of interest. And so you really need to do some burning in order to tone that down and keep our attention focused on the center element. Oh, I really like the colors here. And it's got like all the blues on one side and all the reds and yellows and oranges. So you got the two different families of color all in here. But it's right, there's a very clear sort of delineation right down the middle. So it's splitting this in half, and we're not really sure where we're supposed to look. So what I'm going to suggest is that cropping off the right-hand side about 2/3 of the way over to where the blue starts. So hold your tool up and see. And that way we've still got that nice warm colors over there, and we're moving into the cool colors on the right. But now we know what we're supposed to be looking at. And it doesn't seem like there's this schism right down the middle of it. Okay, so, I get this is very geometric, very, very strong forms, but I'm finding that huge span of white negative space right smack down the middle of it is just making the composition very difficult. I really feel like it's not working. I like the geometric shapes on the bottom there, the kind of the stripe on the top, the feeling of form of the edge of the wall, all good things. The only thing I could think to do with this to make it stronger would be to slice out of a horizontal strip from the middle, which would get rid of that one of the posty things that's sticking out. and then bring it together, which you could easily do because there's nothing in here, and just make that white, that spanch in the middle much narrower. That would bring the top and the bottom closer together, give more emphasis to those parts of the image. And I think that would improve the composition a huge amount. It would be fairly easy to execute. So I highly recommend trying it and seeing what you think. Okay, so this is great. It's got lots of motion, lots of color, uh, good value contrast. The zoom technique is a great one for getting all kinds of interesting stuff. Having the zoom right in the center like that, which is always going to happen when you do this technique if you don't do any cropping, makes it so that it's a symmetrical composition, but it isn't, because it's not the same all the way around. There's lots of variation. So try cropping it in from the right about a quarter of the whole width of the thing. So crop off the quarter on the right and some on the bottom. That gets your zoom center, which is also your center of interest, out of the middle, and it gets rid of the less interesting part, because the part on the right side and the bottom, there's not a lot of contrast. It's all sort of the same. Whereas in the left-hand corner, there's a real feeling of motion and lots of variation in color and value there. And so I think that would give it a much, much stronger composition. Okay, this has lovely colors. Got a nice sort of soft kind of feel to it. I am not sure about the texture that was applied onto here. It looks like one of the Photoshop filters that I'm familiar with, or if not, it's closely related. But I feel like it's too much, and it's not really it's not really adding, it's giving a little bit of harshness to something that's otherwise really soft. So I think backing off of that a little bit so that it's not quite as prominent as it is would make the image stronger. Okay, so we've got very strong reds and blues here. There's almost a feeling as I look at it, I sort of feel like there's a mountain range in the background, clouds in the sky. I like the fact that it's brighter on the top than on the bottom, and there's some movement with it coming in and on a diagonal and going out. So the red elements of this are giving us a path for our eyes to follow. So I think that aspect of it is working quite well. I finding the colors, the blue. Well, I shouldn't do that because it's my own prejudice, but yeah, the colors made me a little bit uncomfortable just because of the intensity of the turquoise. But other than that, I feel like there's a lot of interest here and a lot of good path for the eye to follow. Okay, so I like this one a lot. You've got the cool colors in the upper left corner, the warm colors in the lower right corner, and the shadows that are going through, those strong lines going through, are tying the whole thing together. The big dark strip down the middle, I would maybe, if you could have moved around a little bit and gotten that to be a little narrower, I think would have helped the composition. It took me a while of looking at this to see the pattern of the concrete block wall on the inside there. But that there isn't really enough interesting in there. Maybe if it was lightened slightly so that we could see those lines, it would give it a little bit more interest. But that's the only thing. But overall, I there were many things that I liked about this one. All right, so this one, after I'd looked at it for a little bit, I very clearly saw a portrait of a woman in profile. So I hope everybody kind of sees that. It would have been nice if you had enhanced this to show that. So it's, the image has great, uh, uh, it's got a little bit on the monochromatic side, which is always a good thing. And there's lots of nice texture and whatnot. But I think that it would have been really spectacular if you had burned down around the head of the woman. She's got her hair sweeping back from her forehead, a little bun on the back. The shoulder comes down. She's got like a white lapel there. I don't know if everybody's seeing what I'm seeing, but that's what I'm seeing. And I would have emphasized the portrait by darkening the area around her, giving it some background. It would also give the image a little more depth, and people would definitely see the abstract portrait of a woman right away when first looking at the image. Okay, so reflection on the water. I love reflections on the water because you're using, I think the greatest artist ever on the planet was Mother Nature. You just look around at natural things and you see incredible beauty. And reflections on the water of natural things fall into that category. It's automatically abstracted for you by the movement of the water. I could be completely off base, and that's not what this is, but that's what I see here. So we've got and it's like fall colors too. So very earth tone with the what I think are trees growing up from the bottom. I love this image. I think it's got everything going for it. All right, so very monochromatic, all shades of blue, but that always tends to work. And that dark line going through it just gives us a path for our eyes to follow right through. It's also going from dark on the left to the brighter area on the right, so it's kind of giving us a destination to go to. And then, of course, there again, Mother Nature's work. It looks like frost on on glass. Is just incredible. It's just beautiful. Anywhere you could have sliced this into much smaller pieces and gotten multiple abstracts out of this as well. So yeah, really nice.
That was third place. We go to second place.
All right, so with this one, the darkness of it kind of like when I first bring it up in the judging module, it's all a bunch of thumbnails and it just kind of looks like this dark blob. But when you get it up, when I got it up on the screen, it's like, oh, there's much more here than meets the eye when you first bring it up. But the longer I looked at it, the more I saw in it. And it's kind of like, to me, I see a dragon swimming in a sea of like fire water. And then you've got the little bit of the sky above. So that really bright area gives us a good contrast between the darkness of the outside of it. The only thing I would try with this, and I don't know whether it will help it or not, is brightening up that area sort of in the center of the top where it looks like it's stars and the Milky Way kind of in the sky, and just maybe lighten it a little bit, give it just a touch more saturation. And I think that might be really cool or not. I'm very visual. I have to see it to know if it's going to work, but I would say give that a try and see what you think.
And first place.
All right. So what I see here is like the sun shining down from above, and some green vegetation, and some trees growing up in the middle. I see a little scene here. I love the vibrance of the colors. Um, the yeah, the darkness on the right is kind of keeping our eye into the frame. Um, I wish there was a little bit less glare on the area right underneath the yellow area, but that's the only thing that I wished was a little bit different about this. I actually think it's a really compelling image.
Okay. That we move on to nature B. And Jen, I'm gonna beat the broken record. You
I
gotta.
know, speed up, speed up. I
So
know, I have
let's
tendency.
dive in.
Okay, so this is nature, right? Yeah. Um, so this one, gosh. I see the natural elements, but I also see what looks like an old building or something in the background. And the center of interest of this image has been nicely highlighted. So we've got a little bit of a frame within a frame and a face peeking out from here. My problem with that in a nature competition is I don't feel like the center of interest of the image should be something man-made. And that's what's happening here. So while I think this is a really cool image, I don't think it's not as much of a nature image as I would like to see in a nature category. All right, so we've got the three pelicans here. Um, They're showing up very nicely on the background. They're kind of in a row, so kind of gives an implied diagonal, and we've got the other a diagonal intersecting it with the rope coming from the other direction. So I think compositionally, it's working quite well. There's because of probably bright midday sun. There's a like burned out spots on the tops of the largest of the birds and on the wing as well. And some real hot spots on the other two birds. And so want to try and tone those down so that they don't, because there's makes them look a kind of unnatural, and you don't want that in a nature image. All right, and here's the little guy, maybe first flight. That's sort of the story that I see. The creature is nice and sharp. So it's except for the motion in the wing there, but it's sharp around the eye, which is where it needs to be sharp. And the vegetation is a little soft, so that's really helping us focus right on that bird. I think there's way too much vegetation on the right side there. I really don't think you need that. He's not even moving in that direction. He's moving down at a sort of a diagonal. So I would crop about half of the right side from the side to where the bird's head is. Just take that right off, crop it into a vertical. You can hold your croppy tool up and see what you think. And I think that would improve the composition a lot. And then just toning down that background a little bit so it's not so much brighter than the bird would also help. Okay, so nice picture of this bug kind of emerging out of the flower. It's nice and sharp around the bug, and the fact that the focus falls away from it doesn't bother me at all. We can still see the environment. Um, I love the colors. You definitely have a complementary colors thing going on, and the blurred background is also very nice. It's really making the subject stand out. Um, what I do think though is that the flower, fairly bright flower, completely blurred out on the right, is just a distraction. And you just don't need that. I would crop out that right side enough to get rid of that flower there, not enough to put the other thing, the subject in the center, but just enough to get rid of that big flower over there. And then I would flip it so that it's the other way around, so that the negative space would be on the left, because we read from left to right. So our eyes tend to enter and travel through an image from left to right. So having the negative space on the right-hand side, so we travel through it to the main subject, generally works better than the other way around. All right, so a nice get a really good feel for the desert here, the vastness of it. We've got the little recognizable uh, camel with rider in the distance, which gives us a nice sense of scale. Wouldn't have that at all if we didn't have something we could know the size of. So I think this is a good depiction that gives us a good feel of the desert. It's nice and sharp front to back, so we can see how the wind and whatever forms the undulations of the sand in front. So nice landscape depiction of the desert. Okay, so we're showing the rock formations here, and looks like we've got a bit of a longer exposure because the water's kind of soft, and the wave action around the rocks is just kind of turning into like a halo. It's nice, and it's showing us the texture nicely in the rocks and all. I do feel like this image is slightly tilted to the right. And so I think rotating it to get it to be a little bit more upright so that the horizon lines, the water lines of the various things in here were more level would help. Having an off-kilter water scene. The horizon's not obvious here, so it's a little bit harder to do, but I definitely feel like it's slightly tilted to the right. Okay, another nice landscape. It's really giving a really good feel of winter out in the wilderness. I like the the colors are really adding to the feeling of just being way out somewhere in the wilderness. I do think that cropping a little bit off the bottom of this would improve the composition, because the really interesting part is the curving river that's going through and up into the tree area. So maybe half of, if you look at the bottom, about halfway up from the left edge, halfway from the bottom to where the water starts, and just take it off right about there. I don't think would lose you anything important, and would improve the overall composition of the image. So nice smiley guy having a snooze. He's it's very clear he's in his environment, and that part of it, the animal in the environment doing something, in this case taking a nap, but it's a story. He's still doing something. The problem I see with it is it's not very sharp. It's definitely lacking in definition in the fur in the shoulder and leg area, chest area, and the greenery in the upper right corner there has almost it looks slightly abstracted. The detail is not there either, and yet it doesn't really look like a general blur. So it's a little bit odd in that respect. So I think that with a nature image, you want to keep everything nice and sharp so you can see, well, at least the subject. Um, and yeah, he definitely would need at least more definition in the face area. All right, so nice portrait of this guy. Great detail in the body, very clear around the eye, nice texture in the rock that he's on. And the background is showing his environment. The background is, however, really bright. And so is the areas of that rock. So I think going in and brushing in some burning to darken things down would help keep us more focused on the subject. But nice portrait of this animal. I like the composition, the way it's placed in the image, but I would definitely darken it down around him. Okay, so close-ups. Close-ups are a wonderful thing, and in this particular case, you got really great colors and beautiful sharpness out in the water drops area, especially near the top. And I like the way, that you've arranged this on so the composition I think is reasonably good. I would crop it into a square by taking some off the bottom. I think that would help it a little bit. But the main thing is that the tips of the stamens are not sharp. And they're the part that's right in the center, and it's sort of the center of focus. So those should have been, if you were going to sacrifice focus, you needed to sacrifice the periphery and not the center of the image, especially that central one. This is because this is sitting still, this is a candidate for focus stacking. So take multiple shots at different focal distances and then merge them all together in software so that you can get an image like this sharp all the way through. And that would make this spectacular. Okay, so another close-up of a middle of a flower. You've got it nice and sharp right in the middle through the furry looking part of this thing, and kind of soft all the way around. And I like the feeling of the softness and the firmness of the brushy looking thing. I think there's great colors and everything. So I'm really liking this. I would crop off a little more, about 2/3 from the right hand edge to where oh dear, how do I describe this? Yeah, okay. So if you look at the bottom, where that right hand side is, crop in about half of that so you lose about half of that at the bottom. So we're cropping in from the right hand side. That gets rid of a little bit of that over there, which I think is just a little bit too much. I think that would improve the composition. All right, another close-up of a thing. And isn't Mother Nature wonderful that she gives us all these beautiful things to see when we get in really close? But again, you have to watch your depth of field when you're doing this kind of thing. We do have an area that's very sharp, that's in from the left, you can see where the air where it's really sharp. But the four things that are closest to us are out of focus. And it's always problematic to have the things in the foreground be out of focus. And so if you're going to do a selective focus thing on it, you need to have the things that are in the foreground sharp, especially on an object like this. So, I think again, focus stacking. You could have done that with something like this because it's not going to run away from you. You can
Mhm.
you can get it to do that, and then again, you'd have something really special. Okay, like this guy. He's got a nice soft background. It looks like maybe there's a little snow coming down here with him. I really like that. The branches around, right around his head there, nice and soft. We can still see what they are, and the colors in the blue colors in the background is just really nice with white on the bird. Like that a lot. The white animals are very tough. His back is burned out to a certain extent. I can see a little bit of detail in there, but I really have to squint in to see it. So I think that needs to be toned down so that we can see a little bit more detail in his back. It's great around the eye and beak and chest area. That back needs some work. The other thing that I would do with this is some cropping. He's pretty close to the center of the composition. And that branch on the right, which is very sharp and in focus, I think is a distraction to the bird. So I would take that off the right side, just enough to get rid of that whole curving in from the bottom there, and just eliminate that whole thing. That would get the bird a little bit more out of the center of the composition. And I think it would improve the composition as well as getting rid of that distraction that's there.
Now we're getting into the honorable mentions.
Okay, so as we get into the awards, it's because of the strength of the story. There were a lot of really nice images, animal portrait type images, but with nature, the story is the most important thing. This one, obviously, there's a story going on here. These two guys are interacting with each other, and there's definitely a relationship going on here, and this is probably a typical behavior that happens with these guys. So the strength of the story is what got this image into the awards. In terms of the technical aspects of it, I think that you could crop it a little bit tighter. I don't think we need to see that much of the environment. The important thing is to see what's going on. So I would crop both sides in a little bit. And I would darken down the grasses in the background there so that it's not quite so bright, and that would help. And likewise, some of the area of the water around there, and that would direct our eyes in more towards the action, the nature story that's going on in the middle. Okay, so another nature story. This one, obviously, the bird is feeding on this flower, and that's definitely a nature story. The background is nice and plain. Everything is reasonably sharp. The plant, the bird, everything, even the wings. The wings have a little bit of motion blur to them, but these guys, their wings move so fast, it's really hard not to have a little bit of motion blur there. Um, there is some haloing going on here, especially around the feet. If you see down the feet, you see the haloing around the toes and whatnot. So that indicates to me that there was probably some masking that was done so that something could be done with that background. That background is so plain that you would have to you would have to, I don't know how you would even get a background that plain with a plant coming out of it like this. So if you're going to mask and alter your background, you have to be very careful that you're doing a really good job with the masking so that you don't wind up with haloing that winds up making the image look a little bit unnatural. But on the strength of the story, this one was an honorable mention.
And third place.
Okay, so real obvious story here with the piece of ice just shearing right off of here and splashing into the water, and you've just captured that beautifully, and we can clearly see the big hunk that's coming off. The lighting is such that it's very, very clear that that's happening. And as a bonus, we've got the little bird there flying through, which gives us a sense of how enormous this is. So whenever there's something recognizable, you've got to get a really good sense of the scale. There's another little bird down in the right-hand corner. And it would be easy to miss those guys, but if you spend a little time and you look at it, though, those little elements are definitely a plus. But nice, strong nature story that doesn't involve animals interacting with each other, and that's kind of a rare thing in a nature competition. Okay, so I found this very interesting. It's a terrific photograph. You've got the nice clouds in the background. You've got you can very clearly see the birds. There's a little bit of motion blur in the wings, but that's all right. We know the wings are moving. It's very sharp through the eyes on both of the birds. Um, but the nature story here, and I had to look it up. Why was this seagull looking like he's chasing this pelican? And when I looked it up, this is what seagulls do. They chase pelicans around, wait for them to have a bunch of food in their big bills, and then they go in and they steal it. This is a really typical behavior that happens with these two species interacting with each other. And there's names for it, and I had it all written down, and then I forgot to bring my notes with me. So I can't tell you the names. I think this is called a follower bird, and it's called something about a feeding. I forget what. But very strong nature story because it's showing that behavior of the seagull chasing after the pelican.
First place.
Okay. And again, even without the nature story, it's this very strong composition. We've got the three ducks arranged in a triangle. We've got a nice plain background because they're completely surrounded by water. We're cropped in enough that the subjects are really prominent in the frame, but not so tight that we feel like that it's too tight. The nature story, again, I had to look it up, but it looked to me like this male duck here was showing off for the females. And so I looked it up. And sure enough, this behavior of pushing the chest up and reaching the neck back, and there's this cooing sound that goes along with this behavior, is meant to attract the females. The females are giving him the cold shoulder. They're playing hard to get here.
Getting out of there.
We've got a kind of a fun story as well as a really typical pose as captured in the male behavior. So really nice, strong nature story here as well as a strong image technically.
And we're off to Nature A.
Okay. Okay, so yes, it's a nature image, and it's interesting that you took this from a kind of a different sort of perspective looking up. Um, it it doesn't have a strong enough nature story to be a standout amongst the other images in this grouping. But you know, sometimes that's what we do. Okay, so this one's a nice portrait of this bird. It's not much of a nature story to it. And I think it's too dark. The bird itself needs to be brightened up. It's all blacked out. And we're not seeing any detail in the feathers. That nice little thing of color right in the middle is standing out very nicely. But I think we really need to be able to see more of the form and texture of the rest of the bird. Also, the really big bright things in the upper right corner need to be removed. Okay, another portrait shot of a bird. Again, whites are very difficult. We've got some burned out area in the head there. Some nice detail in the feathers below. Way too much background around this guy, and I wish the bottom of his feet weren't chopped off. Okay, so the nature story here, I guess, is in winter waterfalls freeze, and it is quite amazing that those huge icicles form with this. I think the composition is pretty good, and I think that it's a well captured, and the pool with the where the water's going into at the bottom is adding some interest to this. So nice image of this phenomenon. Nature story here. I guess these little bear cubs do this a lot. They climb up trees as a way to keep them. I don't know if it's because they learn to climb or whether they're avoiding some kind of danger below. But we can see them pretty clearly. Their eyes are looking right at the camera. It looks like it's almost like, yeah, take our picture. It would have been nicer if they'd been a little closer together because of the separation of the subjects. It's kind of it would have just been nice if it was more consolidated, but it's a good nature story. Okay, so nice fall scene. Beautiful colors, especially in the foreground areas, and that atmospheric perspective that develops so that where colors fade as you go into the background is giving this lots of depth, and there's some interesting clouds in the sky. I know that you allow to have the human element going through here, and that does help to give this and the little village peeking through here a sense of scale with this. Where the eye is being drawn to is the big bright spot in the water just to the left-hand side of the body of water. And there's nothing in there for us to, once we're drawn there, there's nothing for us to see. So compositionally, I think if there's some detail that you could have drawn out of there, maybe darkened that down a little bit, it would have helped this image some. All righty, so basically we have a portrait of this bird. He is walking along, and maybe he's looking at something he's going to go after. I just can't tell because I can't see what he's looking at. So the nature story isn't particularly strong here. In terms of, I like the placement of the bird in the frame. That's great. The background is very bright, and so it's winding up being a distraction. So some judicious burning back there would help. All right, this guy's very interesting, very strong. I like the soft background. That's really working well. And I getting a really clear, it's a portrait of this guy. He's just kind of standing there. I was distracted by what he's standing on because it looks very man-made to me. Weathered, yes, but it looks like this is a wooden object that was cut. It almost looks like the tip of a clothespin to me. So I found that to be a little bit distracting from the nature story here. And that could be easily solved by cropping the whole bottom off of this so that you just see the slanting up part, turn it into a horizontal composition. So hold your crop tool up and see what you think. And that would give more prominence to the insect and eliminate the distraction of this thing that looks like it was something man-made. Okay, this guy's so cute. And he's nicely placed in the frame. We get a really good sense of his environment. We can see the vastness of in the background there, and it fades out. I think that's really, really well done. This is a beautiful portrait of this guy, and I love the composition. And it's not a particularly strong nature story because he's just standing there posing for the camera. But it's a lovely animal portrait. All right, so great close-up of this guy. You really see all of those beautiful colors and all the details, the little hairs and everything. The falling away of the focus as we go out towards the edges of it are just making the image that much stronger. And this is a really terrific portrait of this guy. I don't particularly see a nature story here, but he is absolutely beautiful, and it's a beautiful photograph. Yeah, these guys scared me a little bit. They just sort of, it's like, they're marching in. And the fact that there's a whole bunch of them all together like this, probably there's a pretty good nature story here. I wasn't sure what that was, but I'm just assuming that there was. Um, I would like to have seen it with more depth of field because not all of the insects are sharp. There are a couple that are pretty sharp in the middle, but then it falls away. And because I think that the group that as a group, that's what the nature story is about, that all of the insects should have been sharp in this one. Okay, a nice little winter scene. The colors and the softness, and probably there was a little bit of long exposure here because the clouds have a little bit of blurring to them, and I think that's helping set the mood on this one. So really, really nice mood here. It does have human tracks going down into it, but it's a very minor part of it, and I know you guys allow that. The only thing I would say about this is it definitely looks like it's tilted to the right a little bit because you've got a pretty clear shoreline over here, and that should be plumb, should be parallel to the bottom of the frame. So a little bit of rotation I think would help. Okay, and now here we've got definite interaction going on between the male and female moose. The background is beautiful because it's got got a sameness to it. It's helping us to see the subjects very clearly, and there's great definition in the fur, and the eyes have highlights in them. It's a wonderful image.
And we're moving into the awards. Honorable mention.
Okay, so a very clear nature story here. It's kind of scary, actually. I mean, there's the head and there's the tail and the feet, and it's just a skeleton in between. If it had been draped over the branch the other way, it would have been even better. But even as it is, it's obviously a very strong nature story, and it shows just how meticulous the bird is in plucking all of the flesh off of its prey. It's really too bad that there's a kind of a stick coming right up in the middle. But there again, the nature story is the most important thing, and so that isn't really a problem. Compositionally, I think it would be improved if you cropped off about half of the right-hand side from the edge of the frame to where uh, for, to the bird. You'd still have plenty of the environment, but it would give more prominence to the bird, and you really don't need to be able to see the trunk of the tree there. Wouldn't diminish it at all. Okay, so nature story, we've got the baby and the mom, and they're beautifully detailed, all detail in the fur, and the eyes are nice and clear. We've got the bonus of the little blue birdie here, and he's a little bit of distraction from the main part of the story, but I think he's like a little punctuation mark on this image, and so I don't really think it's a problem having him there. I really sort of like it. I would crop off about half of the right-hand side to get them a little bit more out of the middle. The mom is looking in toward the right, so that's where you need the space. And so you always want a little more of that negative space on the right than on the left. So I do think that would improve the composition. But lovely nature story. Okay, and this one also, nature story. He's clearly got a mouthful of food. And even without that mouthful of food, it would be a beautiful animal portrait. We can see all the colors clearly. There's a little highlight in the eye. We can actually see the eyeball in the iris in the middle of the eye. Detail in the feathers really nice, and a nice plain background, and the blue kind of gives us a sense of that environment. So very beautiful animal portrait and a good nature story.
Third place.
Okay, another great nature story. That's just what these kits do. They play fairly aggressively with each other. And I've seen this behavior before with one, like pawing the other one. It's got nice detail in the fur. It's it kind of falls off in focus a little bit, but it's nice and sharp in the eye area, on both of them, and that's really the important thing. But it's a strong nature story, and I think most of the aspects of it have been pretty well handled. All righty, so we get another mom and child shot here, so that makes it a nature story. And I love the fact that the adult bird is looking back at the baby. So often you just see them swimming along, they're all looking in the same direction, but this one with the adult looking back just makes the interaction so much stronger between the two of them. The dark black darkened sort of background is perfect for this. It's really showing off the birds, and a little bit of their reflections in the water is also adding to it. This is a beautiful image.
And first place.
Oh yeah. So this kind of thing always makes me sad but nature is pretty rough. And this is just these animals doing what they do. And it's so clear what's happening here, even though all we're seeing of the prey is the 2 feet sticking up. But the blood on the faces, I mean, this is just an incredibly strong nature story. The only thing that I would consider doing with this would be darkening down the background at the top, which is a little bit too bright, and we want to focus the attention a little bit more in on the action. But it fills the frame very nicely. And I think choosing to come in on this aspect of it rather than making it bigger so that you could see the bodies of the ones on the side more was a good choice because this is where it's happening. This is where they're all eating the prey. So nicely done.
Okay, that concludes this part of our program. Thank you, Jen. We'll give me a second while I unshare the screen and reshare it to show the popular votes. Bum, bum, bum. And one more click. And we should see the popular vote winners. Open B. Yeah, I'll get the click here. Okay, Open B. Third popular, Marcia Grillo, Fall Frolic. Second popular, Andy Cherenson, Sedona Wood. First popular, Julie Lemire, Red Barn in the Deep Snow. Open A, Open A. Third popular, Ron Abernoff, Icy Charles River. Second popular, David Long, Belvedere Appears. First popular, Simon Bunyard, Guardian of the Camargue. Abstract B. Third popular, Marcia Grillo, Pink Erosion. Second popular, Julia Levites, Balance in Blue. First popular, Ralph Brown, Eye on the Clouds. Abstract A. Second, well, we had a tie vote here at 15 votes, so I've got like 4 second places. Susan Teagarden, Tulips in Motion. Emery Petrak, After the Shift. Beth Luckner, Up in the Rungs. And also at 15 votes, Modi Hodis, The Girl in the Rock. First place, Ron Abramoff, Ice Scribbling. Nature B, Libet Ingram, Here's Looking at You. Second popular, Pamela Knobb, Weathering the Storm. First popular, Chuck Carney, Long-Tailed Sylph. Nature A. Third popular, Jim Mann, Moose Encounter. Second popular, Modi Hodis, Treats for Pufflings. Finally, first popular, Simon Bunyard, So Proud. And that concludes my slideshows. Bum, bum, bum. Stop the share.
Well, thank you everybody for participating and sharing your work with us. And thank you, Jen, for judging. And we hope to see everybody, or as many of you as possible, next week for the digital series guest critique in person at the Old South Church.
I will ask if anyone wants to give feedback to Jen about her cropping tools.
Well, yes.
We'd love to hear that. You could do it now, or you can send me an email.
Yeah, I'd love to see if people felt that was helpful.
It was
I don't know
helpful.
whether I should bother. Okay,
It was helpful. But you also might be able to use something from your end to show exactly where you mean. There's things
yeah,
that
I don't actually think there's a way to do that.
you can't do. No, you're right. You can't show the cropping, but you can show the line of where you would have cropped. That's all.
I don't think you can see my cursor. If you
So-
can see my cursor, I could kind of
Yeah.
do a
Okay.
fake line, but I don't think because I've looked
Okay.
into that before, and I don't
Oh,
think
well,
you
then
can
you
do
would
that.
know best. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've received suggestions about using the Zoom annotation tool, and we will look into that to see if what might be practical to do there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, right? Okay. Thank you, though. It was helpful, all your comments about cropping. I thought that was one of the strong points of the critique.
Oh,
So
good.
thank you.
It's always one-sided though. You don't know what you're not seeing. You'll always crop in, you can't crop out.
Right. That's true. But it's, there's no downside to trying different crops. When you look at an image, always look around the edges for distracting elements. Always consider other crops. And if you're working in Lightroom, for instance, you can do virtual copies, which doesn't take up any hard drive space at all. And then you can put them all up in compare mode and look at them all at the same time and see which one you think is the best. So I highly recommend playing with cropping. Yes, it's always best to get it right in camera. I'm not going to
No,
deny
it's
that.
fine.
But when we don't get it right in camera, see what you can do with cropping. I almost always recommend a lot of cropping when I'm a judge.
Well, especially if it's digital, I won't crop that much when it's because I like my ratios being set for, printing and for
Mhm.
framing. But for digital, I think it makes a lot of sense that it doesn't have to be a regular ratio.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Jen.
everybody. Any further feedback, send it through me or send it through Mike Mulligan, and we'll share it with Jen Cano.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure seeing all your